Good. Okay. Terrific. I'd like to welcome everybody this evening to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 regular board meeting of February 13th, 2023. Would everyone please rise and together we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. I'd like to introduce our participants for this evening. Starting at my far right is Ms. Marianne Southwick, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hucker, Superintendent, and to my immediate left, Mr. Casey Morris-Rowe, Vice Chair, Ms. Leslie Bierke, Board Member, Ms. Heather Tenbrink, Board Member, Ms. Allie Anderton, Board Member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, Chair of the Board. And let's open up those doors if we can. Okay, let's get them open. Sweet, thanks. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of the meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door, and comments may also be submitted to the board via email at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing to the clerk. Thank you. Tonight's agenda is posted. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is passed and our agenda will move forward. Tonight we're going to celebrate some teachers of the month. We've got some great teachers, some of them teachers that have even joined us this evening, and so.
All right, so for January, our elementary teacher of the month is Maura Decor. Her principal said when entering her classroom, it is obvious that she has designed a culture where students feel appreciated, have a voice, and always represent themselves through kindness and respect. And I think she is here tonight. Right? Yeah, so congratulations. Also, for January, Melanie Lund is one of our elementary teachers of the month. Her principal says she goes above and beyond to share her passion for project-based learning with her colleagues. She leads our team in charge of STEM nights. She creates systems for storing materials and resources in our maker space, and she organized much of the written evidence for our STEM certification process this year. So congratulations to her, and thank you for being so involved with Fernand's STEM process. For middle school, we'd like to recognize Tracy Lewis. She's an 8th grade math teacher at Lakes Middle School. And her colleagues said she goes above and beyond to help students and staff every day. She serves on our leadership team and makes valuable contributions to help staff get better. She is a hard worker and works tirelessly for our students. So congratulations, Tracy. For the high school level, we want to recognize Tony Hook. He's a PE teacher and health teacher at Venture High School. And his principal said Tony has played a key role in developing a strong and healthy culture for all of us at Venture High School. He has a true whatever-it-takes attitude and is always the first in line whenever there is work to be done or when volunteers are needed. So congratulations, Tony. And then finally, we'd like to recognize a student. So this is, and I'm going to give it my best, Yori Jimenez. And I hope that is close. He was recognized with a life-saving award from the Coeur d'Alene City Council. He's an 8th grader at Woodland Middle School, and he noticed that an elderly neighbor had fallen in her driveway in freezing weather, and he noticed that she was there. He stopped and covered her up with his coat and called 911. And according to the fire chief, she needed that help. She was going to have a hard time without his help, perhaps a fatal. So he was recognized with a life-saving award. So good job, Yori.
We are sure excited to have the groundskeeping crew here this evening for the Coeur d'Alene District. And so we've got here in just a second some Superstar Award certificates given to our groundskeeping crew from the Coeur d'Alene public, from all of us to you. We sure appreciate all the work that you do, and we notice it when it snows and we know when you're out in the middle of the night, and we're sure appreciative about that. From plowing to sanding to de-icing to mowing to maintenance of our sprinkler systems and caring for our schools at all hours of the day, even throughout the harsh winter months. We want to thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to the kids and our buildings, and especially just to our community. And so we've got some awards here for you. And so Kurt, where's Kurt? Kurt's not here, but we recognize Kurt. And Zethan Hilberg. Zethan. Thank you. And stay on up here because we'll get a picture here in a sec. Chris Malgard. Hi, Chris. Thanks. We've got Heath Taylor, supervisor. Thanks, Heath. We've got River. Sorry, River. Thanks, River, for all you do. And Tyler Woodall. So much. And Colt Woodbury. So much. Do you want to say anything about your team up here?
I gotta take the mic. All right. Yeah, I just want to thank you guys. You're all rock stars. Middle of the night, these guys are getting calls. Sometimes we're able to plan and get some sleep, and other times it's on the fly. So everybody's awesome about answering the phone when it's time to go and being here on time and working 12, 14, 16 hours sometimes straight. So great crew. So, thank you guys.
We're going to take a picture here, but sometimes when it's the night before a possible snow day and my kids are asking, is it really happening tomorrow? I think about you guys when I wake in the middle of the night to say, oh, they're out. There's snow. There's school, you guys. So we're going to squeeze together and take a picture. So. Thanks for all you do. We're going to move into high school student body reports then, and we've got a video to start out with from K-Tech.
Recently, a few of our programs at K-Tech have received generous awards from the Leading Idaho grant. The first grant was for the welding program. The program received a $120,420 award, providing the students with 50 new welders, toolboxes, tools, and personal protection equipment. The next grant was given to the automotive program. They received a $192,702.28 award for the purpose of purchasing tools, vehicles, and training aids. Both of these grants were provided with the purpose of expanding their programs. The diesel program also received a grant. Although they won't receive their equipment until May, when asked about how these grants have positively impacted their program, students had to say,
"Grants affected my education because we've got 4 new trucks and cars, and it just gives me a better variety of the models and years we're working on to extend my knowledge with the engines." We've also got more students in the school, so we got a dozen new toolboxes, and we got new wiring schematics to give us more knowledge on wiring and wiring harnesses and all of that. So I think it's going to help me with my future.
We recently received a grant that Mrs. Johnston worked super hard for. We were very fortunate with it. It came with a lot of brand new equipment. It was a grant for $120,000, and we got new toolboxes. We're super organized, and it's overall been super beneficial for the K-Tech kids, me, my friends. We've all benefited amounts from it. Overall, all of us are super happy and thankful that we were able to get this, and it's just made our experience at K-Tech a lot better, and I'm super excited to see where it takes us.
It's very grateful to the Leading Idaho Grant for these generous awards.
Thank you so much, K-Tech. I believe we have our Lake City student body president, correct? Welcome. Hi, Jacob.
How are you?
Good. Welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you.
Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Perfect. Before I start reading, I would like to formally apologize for Dr. Hawker. When I grabbed the fish, I nearly took your arm with it. Yeah. I didn't realize that till the instant replay, so. My bad. Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Hawker, and district administration. My name is Jacob Carter, and I'm the ASB president at Lake City High School. Last month was the annual Fight for the Fish event. Thank you to CHS for hosting the event because that was a lot of work. Thank you to Dr. Hawker, Assistant Superintendent Trent Derrick, and HR Director Eric Davis for their attendance at the event. We are proud to have won the fish and very happy to bring it home. We would also like to take this opportunity to recognize the months of effort and planning put in by our student council, as well as the support and encouragement given to us by our teachers, administration, secretaries, custodians, and lunch ladies. Our entire building came together to make sure that the event was an success and that the spirit and energy shown by our incredible student body was the icing on the cake. We could not be prouder of our LC family, and we wanted to publicly acknowledge everyone's work that contributed to our victory. We spent the month of January teaming up with CHS for our All for All community service project. We were overwhelmed by the amount of support we received from our T-Wolf family, who donated clothing, hygiene products, and blankets to benefit our community. We know that many families are struggling during this time, but our Lake City community showed up huge and blew us away with their compassion and participation. We truly have an amazing community, and we've been so glad to partner with CHS to show our unity and dedication to this city. This month is busy as usual at Lake City. Our basketball teams are prepping for districts over the next few weeks, and our Lake City drama students are preparing for their opening night of Badger on February 15th. This show is running February 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. This production takes place in the 1940s when women entered factories to help in the war efforts as the men fought in World War II. Facing dangerous work conditions and long hours, these women form an unlikely friendship through joy and heartbreak. A vibrant ensemble brings the factory to life as each of the women confronts not only the challenges of entering the workforce in the darkest days of World War II, but also who Badger is and what she truly values. Tickets are $7 general, $6 for students and seniors, $5 for staff and students with ASB. You can buy your tickets online or at the box office or from Paige in the front office. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and we'll see you next month. And I just pushed the red button again.
Thank you, Jacob, and congratulations on the fish. See you later. Next up is our student advisory group and their reports on their work.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening, Dr. Hawker, Board of Trustees, and Ms. Southwick. My name is Dylan Jones. I'm head chair of Student Advisory Group. I'm joined with Secretary of Student Advisory Group, Kennedy Way, and our elementary school representative. We'll start with our middle school. Our representative wasn't able to join tonight, so I'm just going to read what they wrote for us. And they say, at our leadership conference, we discussed ways to make our presence known so students can reach out with us. Reach out with their ideas or concerns. We decided to commit to making a promotional video. We have also discussed advertising at sporting events and maybe even speaking at an assembly. We thought of an idea of adding QR codes to posters when we advertise. We ended the leadership conference with creating a simplified survey with the top 6 topics so that we can narrow our focus and decide what we want to place our efforts into for the rest of the semester. We will now shift focus to the elementary school group.
Good evening, Dr. Hawker, esteemed board members, and Ms. Southwick. My name is Olivia Bax, and I'm a 5th grader at Dawson Elementary. This is my 2nd year on SAG. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to share about all of SAG. Our most recent meeting was at Midtown with elementary school, middle school, and high school SAG representatives, all working together to listen to the concerns of our constituents. We currently have SAG representatives from 3rd to 12th grade, and we all work together to hear what concerns each grade level. Our high school SAG members helped us create our elementary survey, and we are hopeful that it will get sent out to all elementary students. Once we receive the results of our anonymous surveys, we will let you know the results. We are really excited about making this happen, and we'll discuss the results at our next meeting. The purpose of elementary survey is to find out from students what their concerns are, if they feel safe at school, and other things. As mentioned before, our surveys will be anonymous. Thank you for your time.
All right, and now on to the high school. We have 2 items to share. First will be Kennedy sharing about our leadership conference we had in January. I was unfortunately not able to attend, but yeah, she will kick it off.
Hey everyone, my name's Kennedy Way. I'm the secretary of SAG. This is my second year in SAG. So our leadership conference, we held it here on Friday, January 20th in the afternoon. We brainstormed ideas to share our student bodies of who we are, what we represent, and what ways they can really go about reaching us. And we made a commitment to implementing our top 2 ideas. Our first one was increasing our social media presence, especially at a time in the 21st century where social media is a really big thing now and most common amongst teenagers. We thought that was most effective. We do have a student advisory group, Instagram, and we do plan to be more constant about posting and more vocal about the things we're doing. Our second idea was creating posters on specific questions. For an example, it would be like, do you have a problem with the dress code? Let us know what it is. Scan this QR code. Tell us what it is. So it's more of a direct question, attacking those personal things that are bothering you instead of asking an open-ended question where nobody will really answer the question. For a second, we looked at the survey results that we sent out of what students are telling us and what they want our help on focusing on. We chose 2 main focus areas for the rest of the school year, and we are committed to these. The first one is improving student-teacher respect awareness in relationships and communications. And the second one is bullying. We've been working on this topic for a few years now, but we're starting to really focus on it. We want to improve the repercussions in bullying both in the building and online.
And last but certainly not least, our chairman got the opportunity to sit at the governor's roundtable discussion about 3 weeks back. It was really good insight as we could listen to the governor and legislative thoughts and opinions on what they value on the education level. Our chairman, I know Luke Sharon's not here tonight, but our vice chair and I, we really appreciate his time and efforts he gave and the attention he gave us as well. So yeah, we thank you for your time and your efforts.
Terrific. Any questions for our SAG representatives? I will just say, having sat at that roundtable, I thought your voice and Luke's voice and the comments really made at that roundtable were really important and really just timely, and you each had really good questions as well for the governor, and so thank you especially for that work. Great. We're going to move into our CEA report then, and we'll welcome Aaron Hayes to the microphone. Thank you.
Trustees and district administration, thank you for your time. Again, I'll continue to make my goal to be as brief as possible, but I just wanted to underscore the importance, I think, of the material I gave you this month about our teacher retention. This last year, there was a marked increase in people either leaving our district or moving up to different buildings and a lot of shifts. So just to underscore and emphasize the importance that we place on our local levy funds, and hoping that our board and our district is going to continue supporting and getting information out. As an elementary school music teacher, I would love to look at my career long term, seeing a group of kids for the full 6 years as they start kindergarten, going up through. And the prospect going into this district of having this 2-year cycle has just really made it challenging, I think, to maintain programs at the elementary level. And I think if you looked at the numbers of those categories of teachers, you would see a lot of turnover. I don't know how many elementary music teachers were at Fernan prior to me getting there, but it's a difficult ability to recruit and retain if these sorts of programs are sort of up to the determination if we're going to stick around or not. And the other reality I just want to emphasize is the district brought out the prospect of redoing our salary matrix and looking at that closely. And I really appreciate the district spending some time and recognizing that. As I was more seriously looking at the prospect of not working for the Coeur d'Alene district next year, as we've had more community opposition for the local levy, I noticed that I could make about $25,000 salary increase if I went into the Coeur d'Alene or the Central Valley School District. And a lot of teachers have that. In the past, it's not been as much of a spread, but now that we've sort of stagnated up here in North Idaho, the difference between staying in Idaho and then finding somewhere else, about the same commute for me, is getting quite impressive. I am ready to, ride off in the sunset with my job right now if the community decides that's what we want. But as a district, looking at these numbers and where people are staying, where people are going, I'm really hoping that we can, as a team, continue to really make sure that we are retaining our teachers here as we have historically been. This district has always maintained a really high number of teachers who are here for their career and who are willing to put in their time to make this district a better place. So, as always, you're welcome. I'm happy to answer questions in person or in email about my other things, and thank you again for your time.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Any questions or thank you? We try and spotlight a certain department each board meeting, and so this evening we have the pleasure of hearing a mental health department and really focusing on that. So welcome, Mr. Orchard.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Chair Smith and Dr. Hawker, Ms. Southwick, and trustees, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to speak for just a few minutes about the Coeur d'Alene Mental Health Department. I want to give you an overview. Our department, I guess, is relatively new. 5 years ago, we had a number of suicides in the district, including a couple of students and our high school principal. And Dr. Cook, at that time, along with some board members, said we should probably do something about that. We need to look into more things. They said if the levy will pass, we will create this department. And at that time, so that 4 years ago, I was hired. Seth, am I going to drive this or are you? I can drive, everybody. Okay. And then, so 4 years ago, we created the department. Andy and I were hired, and now that's me, the mental health coordinator, and then Ray Lynn, my sidekick, and she is the mental health specialist. And so that is our team of two, which is not super big, but it's bigger than every place else in Idaho. It's a real blessing. The levy continues, and then 2 years ago, the levy funded that again, and so we continue to have this department. And so within this department, this is something we created. We said, okay, students at the center, and around that, what are we going to do around to support those students? I'll go over each one of those categories. And of course, all of that is wrapped around with our families, and our communities have to be a part of all of that. If we're really going to meet the needs of students, we need the help and the support of the families and the communities. And so number one, we talk about whole student. This is really for staff members, for adults taking care of kids. This idea of where do kids come from, and not just, really it was the kids from the hardest places, the ones that typically are not doing well, getting suspended, and and have lots of discipline problems. They said, what can we do? And so we have done lots of staff development and training, really from the ACEs experience and sharing that information and say, this is what ACEs means. Using Bruce Perry's NMT model of therapy. I mean, that's his NMT model of how children and the stress response system has grown. And really it comes all together in the idea of the trust-based relational intervention. That is a model out of Texas Christian University. And it was really developed for kids in the toughest places, in foster care and in child welfare. And so their model helps to meet the needs of kids who are struggling the most. And it doesn't meet all the needs, and it doesn't fix all the problems. And so we borrow other ideas from PBIS and from conscious discipline and other models that talk about how do we meet the needs of kids. And then from TBRI, though, that has been one of our foundational things. One of our goals is always to not pay a lot of money to have experts come in here and continually train us over and over again, but we like to train our own folks to be the experts, and then we train our own staff. And right now we've reached that critical mass, really. We have 25 TBRI practitioners in the district. And so we ran 2 trainings for elementary and secondary folks, 2-day trainings to teach them all of the different things, the empowerment connection strategies, how do we meet the needs of kids, how do we meet their physical needs, their relational needs, and then how do we meet their behavioral needs, or how do we respond to kids who are struggling to behave in school. And then the second category is student wellness and life skills. So how do we help support students? This is probably one of our bigger categories. We have, of course, we have 31 counselors in our district. Those are not part of the mental health program, right? It's just something that we've had and we've had for a long time. So, and that is, I don't know if that's levy-based or not, but it's not part of the mental health department. But they do incredible work, and we couldn't do any of this without them. But part of what I do is oversee these partnerships with outside agencies. We would love for them to expand, but we have Heritage Health. They have 3 mental health counselors that come into the schools, come in 5 different schools, 7 days of the week. Ambitions has 2 counselors that come into 3 different schools 3 days a week. And the Kroc Center just got a new clinician, and they are just starting to partner with us to take one clinician to Woodland 1 day a week. The Woodland person will come there to have lunch with kids, maybe run a pull-out group, help support kids, check in, check out. The other one's Heritage and Ambitions does therapy in the schools. And that's for kids who, for some reason, are not getting therapy outside of schools. The wait lists are too long, or they don't have transportation, or there's some other barrier. And so then, with parent permission only, they can see a counselor within the school day and get their needs met that way. And then we have our 2 own clinicians, Erin Duncan, who you know, has been with us for quite a while, and she is a brand new social worker, master's level social worker. And then Roni Melton, she's been an elementary counselor for years, and they serve and do give one-on-one services and counseling to students in our title schools, our 6 title schools. And they're full-time. They probably see 40 kids a week. They're hopping, they're busy, and they're doing incredible work. We have, with Erin's help, developed this facility dog program, which now we're running. We had 1 meeting last month and approved 2 dogs to be officially approved to be able to come into school. They've done all of their paperwork, they've done all of their training, they have the right insurance, and now they're in schools. And the kids, we do that to make sure that the kids are protected and that the dogs are protected and their owners as well. We have more people applying, which is really neat. And now we see the need for service animals. We had some questions, and so this committee will take over kind of looking and approving service animals, because we see that that's kind of a gap in our school right now. We didn't have a process for service animals to be vetted and to come in. And then, of course, the whole reason it started was the suicide prevention stuff. And here's the parable of the whole thing, right? Well, there's upstream suicide prevention, there's intervention for suicide, and then there's postvention, or afterwards. And so our upstream prevention is sources of strength. So we have that in every school in the district, all elementary schools. They are beginning to get lessons for kids, and it looks maybe a little bit different in each one. And they'll have a lesson about mental health. What is that? What does that look like? How can you maybe support that? They'll have a lesson about generosity or something like that, right? And then some activities to go with it. And then the secondary schools all have different programs. They're run slightly different ways, and they run campaigns that will focus on the wheel. For example, here's Woodland. They ran a generosity calendar. Okay, so their sliver, or the pie of the wheel, is generosity. So they collected change, raised over $1,200 for Children's Village. That was their program for Sources of Strength for that month. Then they ran a Positive Friends campaign. We did a We Belong, and now they created these clubs that kids voted for. And so on Wednesdays, they have a drama club at lunch, a Marvel club, Just Dance, Brain Breaks, Writing club. So they have different clubs where kids can meet other ones. So that's some examples of Sources of Strength campaigns. Here's another one at Lake City High School. Kids in the class got to choose their own slice of the wheel. So one person right over here on the left said, "You are not alone, someone's in your corner." And in the top right lists a bunch of teachers who they think are super safe. So that would be a mentor poster and campaign. The one in the middle, "You have a safe place, you are not alone," that would be a mental health slice. And then that one on the right, they even have a QR code about, check it out, you want to meet a friend, here's different ways to meet positive friends. So these are examples of some of the campaigns that I run. Oops, come on. Then we have, so that's the prevention. And then the intervention would be QPR. Our goal is every 2 years to train every single adult in the school. Last year we probably trained 80%. That include bus drivers, all the support staff, paraprofessionals, people who work in the offices, all the teachers, to get QPR, which is out of Spokane. It was developed in Eastern Washington University. It's internationally known. It's an hour and a half training where the idea is to train the staff what to look for, what to notice, so they can see signs of it and have their radar up. And then we train them how to ask the question. And then once they ask the question, if they get a yes, how do we persuade and refer that student to get more help? So QPR is a intervention model that way. Yes, sir.
Back in 2018, when we started doing this, we did a number of these for the community.
Yeah.
I think there were evenings in the high schools and middle schools. I haven't seen anything like that for a while. Have we done any of those? And I think Kootenai Health does them as well.
There are some organizations that do them. Yeah, I think it's a need. I think maybe, yeah, it'd be good to give it in the community. There would be
big turnouts for those. I think
Would you?
I did one at Coeur d'Alene and at Lake City.
Okay. And that was
I would say
QPR
it's
explicitly.
QPR, and we probably had 100 plus at each.
100
I would
plus.
say, yeah, they were very good turnouts. Granted, it was right after a series of tragedies.
So that would have been the year before I was hired that you did those. And since I've been here, I don't think we've had them. Of course, we were here for like 9 months and then COVID hit, and I think all that stuff stopped. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. So that's QPR. And then our response strategy, this is technical stuff. The Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale is for the counselors or the suicide prevention team. They're trained on this protocol, which is far more. So once the QPR folks get a yes, they go, hey, go talk to someone who knows a little more. And then our counselors and our suicide prevention folks do this, and they go, okay, let's take you to someone who knows a little more if they get yeses. And so that's what they're trained in. So these are intervention ones. And then the postvention is our crisis assistance team. We have 13 people in our district who volunteer to be on this team. And we meet once a month and we do some trainings. And then we show up at schools after something bad happens. And we show up in the school and help support the teachers or help support kids where they come out. And the feedback is usually incredibly positive. The teachers go, just like, if I got a kid who's struggling, I'm still trying to handle all these other kids. Thank you for being there and just handling a few of these kids who really need some help. And so that's what the crisis assistance team does.
And Keith, am I right in knowing that sometimes the assistance that this team especially does, it's even regional, as crisis is.
Yes. So other schools, right? Post Falls has a crisis assistance team. They asked us 2 years ago when they had a death. There was a basketball team over here, and so some of us showed up at the basketball game as the news was breaking in that minute, just to be there. When a young student, a sixth grader at the North, the Idaho Christian School? What is that? North Idaho Christian? Yeah, I think. So they lost a sixth grader. At the second to last day of school last year, we were there on those 2 days, and then this year, Dr. Hawker gives us permission generously. We've supported Kellogg, I don't know, I think 3 times in the last 2 years when they lose. So it is something that we feel very proud about and are and willing to help other places if they want or need that help from us. And then finally, the staff wellness. Well, we need to retain staff, and when staff are doing well, they serve children better, right? And so if we can support staff, then we think that they are retained longer, they do their jobs better, they stay in the career longer. Lots of good things, right? So we have we have resiliency lessons. Yes, sometimes they get that. The big thing we do is this making sense of your worth class. I just left that. We're doing it at Woodland with 13 teachers. It's probably my favorite thing in the job. It's my favorite thing to do. We, again, instead of bringing professionals here to run these classes, we have trained we have 18 people in the district trained to run these groups. We're running them for teachers. We probably had 130 teachers go through it in the last couple of years. And we're actually able to run it for teenagers with parent permission only, and they can take the class as well. They can go for 2 hours. It's 16 hours long, so there's different ways to do it. If anyone wants to join us in the 3 days after school's out, any one of the board members or anybody else who works for the district, you can join us for those days and take this class. Here are the, we do a pre and post. They say, give yourself a score on how kind you think you are, how loving you think you are, how you negotiate your needs, and so on. And then at the end of 16 hours, their scores go up 20% here, 25 here, 43 here. And, you know, a 22% jump in happy is good for 16 hours work, right? Even better is their sad score goes down by 96%. Their I wish I was different score goes down by 156%. Their lonely score goes down by 100%. It is powerful stuff. It's one of the coolest things that we do. And I think it's really helpful for teachers to gain more security, and then they handle stress and they handle tough kids a little bit better. I think they're better at their jobs when they're done. And they're happier at their jobs too. And that's the mental health department. So I'll stand for questions if you have any.
Trustees, any questions? I have one, and I don't want to give you an opportunity. One question that I do have, and I've talked to a number of parents recently, especially parents that are in crisis. And so this seems like a lot that we're doing internally in the schools. What's kind of your perception of what kind of resources are going on in the community right now outside of the schools? Because what I'm hearing from some parents is they're in crisis, their kids are in crisis, they need help, but accessing those resources is little to none to non-existent to they need more.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, it's rough out there. Everyone knows it, and we're not the only ones. When we bring that up to people in other school districts or other states, they say yes, the exact same thing. So we're not alone with that. Sometimes parents will call. They'll call a counselor who will call me and say, this parent needs something right away. And if we go through the right channels and ask the right people, we can usually find them services quickly. Right? So the problem is they don't know how to get those services quickly. They don't know who to call. They don't have the right connection. So it can be kind of hard, and they're on waiting lists for long periods of time. There is this program we've been looking at. It's called Care Solace. It's just expensive, and they would do all that for us, and it would cover everybody. It'd be a really interesting conversation, but it costs money, and it would cost money year after year. And one of the questions is, should the school district be paying that? Right? Is it our responsibility to set up and make sure that everybody can get the services they need, their mental health services met? I mean, that's their model because the school district serves the whole community. But it's an interesting question. If you have someone who's stuck, I get calls all the time, and we can often get them unstuck or get them to somebody who can help. Often, not always. So they should just call. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
If I can say one last thing, we did have one therapist there. Her name was Lindsay. And when I said, well, the levy comes up and this is levy funded and all that, and I don't know if that was a trigger, but she left well before that levy, because this would be my second cycle of the levy. It is really hard. I appreciate Dr. Hawker doing the in perpetuity idea of the levy, because it's really hard to maintain really good people if this entire department's funded on levy dollars, if they don't know if they're going to have a job in 2 years. It makes them wonder and make them start to look. It just makes it hard to plan. So I appreciate that, and a little plug for supporting our programs. Thank you very much.
Keith, thank you to your team. We know kids are in crisis, and so thanks for showing up for them, for teachers,
Yeah.
for our community, truly. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you all.
That leads us into kind of the next thing on our agenda tonight, and it's an opportunity for us just to, as trustees, to kind of have a discussion on the upcoming levy and maybe make some statements and comments. And I think I'll go ahead and kick that off. This had the privilege of being at a number of informational times out in the community, at the schools, and questions just keep coming up. And so I wanted to take a couple of opportunities maybe to ask you, Dr. Hocker, for some clarifying information. There's a number of things that are misinformation that are out there. And one of those things that keeps popping up is kind of that comment, well, why don't you guys live within your means? And why don't you be transparent about your financials? And so for myself, I'd like to hear you maybe respond to that piece of misinformation and then maybe give a comment about it.
Okay. A test put me on the spot.
There
but
you
I
go.
do think that's a good first question because I think that's super easy to answer. We absolutely do live within our means. We have one of the lowest levy rates in the entire state. So I think that's super important. We're down at 96 cents. There are school districts around us that are passing levies and receiving great community support that are triple the rate of ours. So I think I think that might lead into part B of your question in regards to people who may think that our transparency could be much better. And I would simply, open that invitation up for any suggestions that we aren't already currently doing, because I'm not aware of anything that we could do even that we're not doing. We're very transparent. Our books are, in fact, maybe arguably almost too transparent, because everybody gets to see every little thing through a school district. It's law, it's required. And when they start looking at it, you've all reviewed board packets. They're big, they're thick, and there's lots of details in there. The registries and the expenses that go through districts, every month are a lot. And so it takes a lot of time for people to sit down and really go through each of those and take a look. But the accusation that perhaps we're not being transparent is far from accurate. It's very transparent, and everything's on our website. Everything's available. They can ask any kind of questions, and it's all there. So that would be my quick off the cup answer to that one.
Great. Any questions off of that question for Dr. Hocker, or statements? Or
I too hear those questions when I'm out about in the community. I will say the people that I've spoken to at Let's Talk Levy, and just, if I'm at the grocery store or someone runs into me, I have to say most of the people I've spoken with have been very informed. I mean, I'm really impressed with the questions they're asking. They are doing their homework. This is an important decision, so I would encourage you to come to our next Let's Talk with Levy, which is next Friday, the 24th. Or if you ever have questions, email us and we'll do the best we can. I mean, we're happy to answer questions, but I've been really impressed. One question, multiple questions I keep hearing is, I'm seeing ads on Fox News, I'm seeing ads on YouTube. Where is all this money coming? Why? And then, of course, why are we wanting the levy if we have all this money for advertising? So could you speak to that, please? That seems to be something that keeps coming up.
Sure. Well, to my knowledge, we're not advertising on Fox News at all.
Not necessarily on them, but during, I don't know.
We do have a social media campaign, and so social media on your phones and devices will trigger certain things, and how that all works is way above my head. But it's quite ingenious marketing plans that everybody has. I think we've all joked at times that we can go home and talk about a vacation to California somewhere or to, I don't know, Cancun, and next thing you know, you start seeing ads flopping across your phone to go on those vacations. So not accusing anybody of listening out there illegally, but I don't know how all that works. But I do know that we have been operating within the budget that the board did set aside for our range advertisements, and those range did put together some, I think there's been about 4 4 to 5 short little 30-second, 15-second to 30-second info blips, if you will, that have been flying around, and they get triggered based upon different spaces that you go. So I've even heard of some folks who have heard of just the audio associated with one of our ads, and we didn't even purposefully run any audio only advertisements. It's just the platform that they're on happens to be maybe only audio, and so you will get the actual words of maybe a K-Tech commercial or something like that. In fact, and I guess that's a good reminder too, the 3 K-Tech commercials that are running, those are just reruns of commercials that were done in levies past. So those have just been modernized and truncated a little bit with very little effort to just reuse, because we definitely didn't have the funds to go create a bunch of new commercials. So really truly, we've been very careful, I guess, with trying to get the very most out of our $60,000 with range. Things are very expensive, as I've shared with you. Just to even send home flyers to a family, is 50 cents a stamp, 50 cents an address, and if you send that out to 20,000 people in our school district, there's 10 grand just in one chunk. And I'm not convinced that might be the best use of those sources or of those resources. We get lots of stuff in the mail, and it might easily just get thrown in the garbage. So it's been much more of an online focus.
I think it's always good just to remember too that there is supportive groups that are out there that are promoting and doing their own online kind of campaigning and stuff, separate and apart from the informational stuff that the district puts out. And so I don't know if the community always realizes that there's separate groups out there that are super supportive of the levy and want to see it happen. So we're putting out information as well.
Good point.
So. What about, could we come around to the perpetuity question? And one of the questions that I've seen out there and been asked is this just a blank check? If we step into having this in perpetuity, every year we can levy whatever dollars we want, and that's just not true. And so would you speak to that for us?
You bet, Chair Smith. I'd be happy to. The perpetuity levy is the term of the levy is fixed in regards to the dollar amount. So in this case, the levy is being asked for $25 million, and it will be locked in at $25 million forever. There will be no opportunity for the board to ever try to levy $25,001 without going back to the community and receiving a vote in order to do that. So that's the perpetuity component of that, which I think in the long run, again, I still have shared this out in many of my presentations. I absolutely believe in my heart of hearts that a perpetuity levy saves taxpayer dollars over a 10-year period of time, for instance. You all know as well the stresses and the expenses associated with running a levy. If you have to run it every 2 years, you're much more inclined to specifically address the immediate last couple years of inflationary components that you've just experienced. I think probably the best example is in 2018, the levy was sitting at $16 million. Here in 2023, we're asking for $25 million. That's an increase that we've had over that small little seven-year period of time. I think I obviously don't make those decisions to levy. That's you. But I think it's hard pressed for boards to want to bring that back anytime soon after a perpetuity levy is locked in. And I can see boards that would do that, just every 5 or 10 years. Or I'm not throwing out a set timeline, but I think you look over a 10-year period of time, and it's very likely that a board would have increased rates, once or twice in a 10-year period of time, whereas with a automatic renewal every 2 years, it's not out of the question that the board would be possibly seeking an increase every 2 years, so 5 times in that 10 years. So I do think it's a conservative approach, but I also think as important of all of that is for the consistency of the funding. You've just heard from our mental health department. You've just heard from our teacher association president. The unknown of the levy every 2 years creates incredible burdens on the entire school system, from staffing to budgeting, that makes it extremely difficult. And we lose good people every in between cycles and in even years of levy renewals, and to have a quarter of our budget up in a question every 2 years is just not a healthy budgeting perspective that creates the best avenues for us to make good financial decisions in the long run. So those are some of the justifications for the perpetuity levy that I know you all talked about as well before you decided to ask that question.
And you really said that word right there, renewal. This is a renewal
Absolutely.
levy, and the $5 million additional is separate, which will address teacher salaries and our hourly staff, their salaries as well. And so
Thank you. If I may, just to clarify on that, I think that's probably the biggest question I hear as I go out. There's just a continued misrepresentation that this is a brand new $25 million. And it's just very important for our community to know that that's not the case. This is a replacement of an existing 20 with a new 5. And that new 5 is exactly what you just mentioned. We've really identified about $9 million of needs, but again, being very conservative, we chose to go for 5 of that 9. It clearly, there will still be budget cuts if this levy is approved, because we would need $9 million to address the $4 million of loss that we've had in inflationary components since the last levy was established in 2019 at $20 million. So there's $4 million of buying power that we've essentially already absorbed over the last 4 years of the levy. So we've been tightening our belts all along the way, and we have that $4 million right there. And then, of course, as you have mentioned, to address our hourly employees, unfreeze them so they're not froze between 7 and 12 years, to make at least a starting salary for our hourly employees that's closer to $15 an hour instead of $12.75. That's a $2.25 million fix. And we have the same issue on the salary side with our teachers and teachers being frozen. And as we've heard from our CEA president, our salaries at one time were able to, recruit the best, retain the best. And no, we were never super competitive with our neighboring state. We were okay. We were ahead of the curve. And today, our school district has not been able to keep pace with that. So we're no longer the highest paying school district in North Idaho from a teacher perspective. And so this is it's a bridge in the right direction. It certainly doesn't solve all of our challenges, but that's where that $9 million need was whittled down to a $5 million reality to add to the levy.
Great, thanks. Trustees?
I just want to add on the perpetuity piece. I think one thing that I've been asked about that in particular is, or I've heard multiple times, is, we're losing our voice and our opportunity to vote on that every 2 years. And really, the way I've addressed that question with folks, and I think once you have that discussion, they understand it, but the levy question is an authorization. It authorizes us to levy up to $25 million. But it doesn't require us to levy that much. And so the community still votes for us as trustees. We're on 2-year cycles. And so if they're unhappy with how the district's operating or our finances, they still have the chance to vote who sits at this desk. And those people get to decide how much we levy. And we can levy less, just like we took up the motion last month, I believe, that after the legislative session, we're going to look at things, and if we can, and the levy's approved, we're going to look to levy less if possible. And so I think once you have that conversation with people and they understand, you have a choice, the board can make those decisions. I think there's some comfort with that for those people who are uncomfortable with losing that every 2-year vote. Certainly not all of them, but for some. Just the other thing I wanted to comment on real quick. This is my 4th levy cycle, I think, since I've been on the board. That's why I have all the gray hair. 4 daughters and 4 levies. And I think this is the best job we've ever done on our website as far as getting information. I'm looking at the levy tab now, and there's just a lot of information there.
I particularly appreciate the fact sheet that was added today with those frequently asked questions. I think there's a lot of good information there. And then want to thank you and Shannon for the tax calculator. I think you and I talked about that a few weeks ago, and I know Shannon kind of rolled out a version of that at the open house we had at Ramsey. And there was a gentleman, I think he made it around and talked to almost all of us, but he had a question about his tax. He was trying to figure out the tax implication for his particular property, and Shannon's made it super easy there. She's got the link. You can look up your own assessment from the county. That's a blue click here button. But if you have it, we just got those a few months ago. You can type the number in the square there. Someone's running that. And we just put, I know Dr. Hawker often uses 625,000 because it's easy math for us simple math guys.
Thank you.
And so it shows you what your taxes approximately are currently, what they'd be estimated to be if both levies were to pass, and then it tells you the increase there. So for that person, $625,000 assessed value, it's 185, I think, estimated. So I think that's great. I've used that with a lot of people to show them because there's been some confusion around there. I've seen some literature put out that's really said, could you just scroll down on that, please, Seth? Sorry. Could you, go back to that example of 625, please? So in this example, I know that's hard to read with the screen, but it's showing the 2022 taxes at $480 approximately, and the 2023 would be at $665, I think that says, somewhere around there. And I know there was some information out over the weekend or in the last week that talked about if both levies pass, your taxes in this example would increase $665. The group that put out that information failed to recognize that the existing $20 million M&O levy will be retired at the end of June. So it's true, the levy would be $665, but the $480 that's currently on there goes away, so the net is $185. So just wanted to point that out. But lots of good information on there, cdaschools.org/levy, or just you go to any of our school websites or our district website, there's a big red button that says levy info. So thanks for all who've put that information on there.
Any other comments or thoughts regarding the upcoming levy from trustees?
I guess I have a question that kind of goes along the same lines as Casey's, is that a lot of people that I've spoken to, as well as like previous trustees, have relayed to me that they feel like that is a way for them to keep the district accountable, being able to vote every 2 years for these levies. Having the opportunity to vote for us is also another way for them to do that, but they feel like this is a big part of that accountability for the district, for how we spend their tax dollars, for one, and for two, guaranteeing that we're getting a high quality education to our children that align with our community values and standards. So
yeah, we're certainly aware of that. And again, as just to reiterate, we can make, I'm looking at Shannon as well in case she wants to chime in, but I would say as superintendent, I can make far better financial decisions if I know what my budget is down the road. And that is where with a 2-year levy, you can't do that. We can't hardly enter into a multiple year contract, especially in mid-years between levies, because we don't know if the levy is going to be funded. We can save money in our community and to our long-term expenses by having a budget that we can count on down the road. It's also, again, the stresses on the system, the money that we spend, we can reallocate that money. In time and materials, I've said multiple times, I'm convinced we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every 2 years educating our community in regards to a levy. Those are funds and time and effort that can go somewhere else, go much better places, much more immediate impacts to the students that are here in the school district. So I think in the long run, I think it's a trade-off. I think I certainly can understand people saying we don't want to give up that voice every 2 years. We want to hold you accountable and have that available. And I'm working diligently and spending lots and lots of time and resources to create a collaboration approach in our community where that trust will be there, so that they know that they don't have to wait for elections, they don't have to wait for levies. If there are issues and concerns, we hear them. We have opportunities for them to come every board meeting and share out concerns, directly with the board. Our team is always very receptive to email inquiries, to personal visits in our office, as well as even our schools. So we're just continuing to chip away and to make sure that our community sees the value of a partnership, and everything we do is really one. We're all in this together to benefit our kids. Having the potential loss of such a large amount of budget every 2 years is not healthy anymore. With the hopeful passage of this perpetuity levy, let's say in 5 or 10 years the board needs to come back and ask for $5 million. That's going to be the ask, and $5 million at that time might only be 5% of your budget. So you don't have mass exodus from staff. You don't have that stress within the system as you go back and say, hey, community, is this important? Are you supportive of this small ask? And with any luck, we continue to chip away down at the Capitol in Boise, and we continue to get some funding so that you as a trustee, as a board, get to make a decision. Maybe we don't have to levy anything down the road. That would be sweet if that ever happened. But today, our current the Idaho funding model relies on local levies to fill the gaps, and that is why so many school districts have to do that, and 80+% of school districts do that. And we have said many times that the other 20% are either one-room schoolhouses or they can't pass a levy. They can't get it done, and so they're doing without. And our community has spoken for 40 years about the things that the levy needs to fund, the growth and the programs, like a mental health program, like Mr. Like we've been talking about all kinds of various programs, but Mr. Orchard called out, we're a team of 2 in a mental health department with high needs in our district, and yet I think we might be the only district in Idaho that has a mental health, team of 2. But that has come about based upon needs in our community, and our community has supported that, and that's where it's grown to what it's been, where it's at today. I think a reset to freeze that growth so that it's not 25% of your budget was very appropriate for you to support, and now moving forward for the next 5, 10, 20 years, you'll only be needing to ask the community for whatever growth in additional dollars that you might have as that time comes. And I think during that time it creates great opportunity again for more collaboration, so that our we will be needing, we know that there's a build out in our district of another couple thousand students that'll be coming our way. We have to have a plan to address that, and we already have schools that are over capacity. And so this allows our community an opportunity to focus on things like that over the next 10, 20 years, instead of a constant renewal every 2 years of such a big paramount question that looms over everybody's head every 2 years.
I think for me on that question, going through this 8 times now, it's something that's been talked about, I think, over the last 3 cycles, so 6 years. Really started because Sandpoint voted in perpetuity or an indefinite levy 6 years ago. And then that's when I first started hearing about it really from our community, and hearing from community members discussing it and asking, are we considering that? And I think that's built just over time. Of course, COVID kind of rocked everyone's world, right, including ours. And I didn't hear a whole lot of talk about it then, right? But I definitely did more this year. I think absolutely it's it's a no for some people, and I get that, and I can respect that, and recognize that. But I think for a lot of people, it's a yes, and it's because these programs, the music, the art, K-Tech, the mental health stuff is so important to them. They know how important it is to our kids, and they don't want it hanging in the balance every other year of on that vote. And fortunately, that hasn't been the case, right? We've had 36 years of support in our community. And I think that's another piece I've heard is, hey, you guys come to this every 2 years with this, and you always have your hand out. If you can ask for it, why aren't you just asking for it in perpetuity? So.
A question I've had a couple times is why perpetuity? Why not 5 years or 10 years rather than the 2-year cycle? And the answer to that is we can't. The state allows us 2 years or perpetuity. They don't allow a middle ground there. So that's I think that would make a lot of sense, but that is not currently an option for us. So to me, perpetuity provides a lot of stability. When I think about some of our best programs in our schools, they're often run by teachers who have been in our schools for a really long time. And so keeping those teachers around to run those great programs is really important for our community and our students.
Great. Any other trustee comments or thanks for the time? That was really helpful. Thanks, Dr. Hucker. We're gonna move into our time of public comment, and want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items, and those wishing to address the board during this public comment period are limited to one comment, not to exceed 3 minutes. At the designated time, you'll be called to the podium. Please state your name and your city of residence. Please keep in mind that the board members will not respond to public comment. If you have handouts, you're welcome to give them to Ms. Southwick. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directive, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate the speaker's privilege to address the board. If you have additional comments that you'd like to present to the board, you may provide these in writing. All right, this evening then, I'd like to welcome up Mr. Matt Edwards to the microphone. Thanks.
Hello. Good evening. Wow, that was a great discussion because it dovetails right into my public comment. Apologize for my loss of the voice. It's not because of the Super Bowl. I've been looking over item 250, which is part of the when you guys send out the budget to look over and review, there's an item, it's number 250, which is the ESSER 3 funds. And this was approved by the federal government to send COVID relief money to schools in order to get the students to come back into the schools safely and catch up with their learning. And so I've been searching through the entire year. There's so much to say here, and I've emailed a lot of you, or all of you, this before. So I'm going to skip ahead to the important part of what was addressed here tonight. I want to know why so many of the most important things, like this mental health program, like maintenance and infrastructure, why the safety of our children is dependent upon a levy. Why isn't this part of the normal operating budget of the district? We've heard you guys talk about how things are so vital, they're so important. And I'm not here to disagree with that at all. There's some very important things that are happening. But why are they part of a levy? Why aren't they part of the normal district budget? Because when I look at how you use the COVID money and you're sending teachers to junkets across the country, you're paying for hotels, you're paying for admission to conferences, and those are coming out of this COVID relief money. Or you're paying for field trips that normally were taken out of general fund, but then there was COVID money that was used to send kids on field trips. I look at, you want to know why the community wants a check every 2 years? It's because we need a check every 2 years. We can vote you out every 4 years. What happens in the 2 years? And not every one of you is every 4 years. So the discussion was very enlightening because it kind of showed me where your priorities are. And if your priorities are for these really important programs and these really important things that we're doing for our students, then why are they dependent upon the levy? Why isn't the levy covering pizza parties or teacher junkets? Why doesn't the levy cover those super extracurricular activities? And let's put safety of our children, let's put maintenance of our schools, and let's put important mental health programs under essential items. There is legislation. You guys know legislators. Some of you know them very well. Let's talk to the legislature, and get something passed that allows you to do this, because all I hear is passing the buck. Oh, we're hamstrung. We can't do this because the legislature won't do that. I talk to the legislature. I say, look, they're spending COVID money on sending teachers across the country.
And Mr. Edwards, it's 3 minutes.
Yeah. Sending teachers across the country. And they say, well, they shouldn't be doing that with the money. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Mr. Coons?
Good evening. My name is Howard Coons. Once again, I've got something to show you. This is a yearbook from my first year of teaching, which was on the south side of Chicago. Most of my students were what you would call people of color. I never paid any attention to that, nor did I hear any of the staff refer to a general group of students according to what they looked like. And that's the way it should be. God has made all the peoples of the earth one human race. Every nation and tribe and tongue is descended from Adam. Your focus on diversity divides people. It is racist, and it needs to stop. Your website says that equity is impartial, but your plan is to treat each student according to their needs so that all will be equally successful. Thus you plant the seeds of entitlement, and what does that look like down the road? If I can't afford a house as nice as yours, should something be done so that my standard of living is equal to yours? That's what equity looks like further down the road. It's un-American, it destroys ambition and responsibility, and it needs to stop. Inclusion involves denial of the truth that God made us male or female. We are what we were at birth, and that's all we will ever be. Those who don't understand this are hurting, and they will hurt society. They need help, not affirmation. To teach children otherwise is evil. Your strategic plan for the future has much to say about diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI and CRT are two different sides of the same coin. You've heard a lot of people in this community speak against these things, and it doesn't seem to make any difference to you. You're asking for us to fund the schools, but unless you get rid of these things, there are a lot of people like me that don't think that you deserve to be funded. I want to close by reminding you that I emailed the board asking that you would place the public comment at the front of the meeting. I was told that that wasn't going to happen because the chair didn't want anybody to miss out on all the good reports. I've waited for an hour now, over an hour, in order to be able to say something. You require me to be here before the meeting starts if I want to speak. I can't help but feel that that is disrespectful to the people who want to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCollum?
Good evening. Regarding the supplemental school levy, personally, I'm offended that you believe the majority of this area's citizens are willing to relinquish the right, privilege, and responsibility to vote every other year on a measure that directly impacts the taxes we hand over to the government for disbursement to this district to further your agendas. The first rule in business for proper use of operational funds is not to use more than the necessary to produce the best results. The goal of every school should be to provide for the best possible education for its students. I believe this district is spending too much on statist, bureaucratic, administrative models, as well as books and curriculum that do not provide a classical education. Instead, it advances social fads. Now, a few things to consider. 1, administration growth in public schools has exploded relative to growth in students and teachers. 2, there is free educational curriculum available from a number of sources, such as the well-known Hillsdale College K-12 curriculum. 3, the alphabet programs, directives, virtue, and status signaling have overtaken public education in the form of diversity, equity, inclusion, social emotional learning, climate justice, social justice, environmental social governance, and now sexual fluidity, just to name a few. 4, more than a third of students in reading and half of the students in math do not meet proficiency levels, and yet the graduation rate is 91%. How does that work? Simply put, the monetary proficiency and psychological costs to this entire community must be addressed now, not with expensive, slick marketing, but with a return to a well-structured classical education. You're constantly answering citizens' questions by saying, it's for the kids. The woke programs and curriculum are not being done for the kids, but rather to the kids. Is that why you want millions upon millions of tax dollars to be levied upon citizens for an indefinite period of time and remove their ability to vote, holding you accountable in the future? Is it? Now I've heard you're sending out absentee ballot request forms using the children as couriers, which sounds like an attempt at ballot harvesting. It may or may not be legal, but it definitely fails the morality test. The road you are forcing us to travel is allegedly lined with good intentions. Before reaching our destination,
That's 3 minutes.
we'll all be begging for mercy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments this evening. We will move into, where are we at? Oh, item 7. We're going to move into our consent agenda for this evening. Is there any questions or comments regarding our consent agenda? Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. We have then our finance update for this evening. And is there any questions on that, or any questions from the trustees regarding our finances this evening? Okay, great. Yeah, and oftentimes our questions, just for the community, those get answered, and they're in our board packet and available, the questions that we've asked prior to. So thank you, Shannon, for taking care of those. Any questions? There's discipline data as well on there, and we're going to move into then high school graduation requirements then this evening. Dr. Hucker?
Well, I'd like to bring up Trent Derrick, and we will have a conversation in regards to, well, I guess I don't even need to bring up Trent. He's available. I'm available. But this is really a second reading item. There's been 2 public comments that were submitted there for your review as well. So we'll certainly answer any questions. So we'll get Trent ready for any questions. But the red line procedures to 2700P are presented there. So it's our recommendation the board approve this this procedure as presented. You certainly can, we can discuss those 2 comments as well.
Are those 2 comments incorporated now with the blue? Is that?
That's my understanding, and Ms. Southwick, maybe you could clarify, but that is my understanding that the blue lines are, well, they're public comment, and so based on my approval, I think it just clarifies the wording and it is more clear. So I would suggest we would include those.
Yeah, historically, I know we don't see blue a lot. The way we've handled it, or the red lines are the change, the big change from the existing policy, and then blue lines is indicating what changed since we saw it last month.
Okay, so several of those blue do kind of agree with the public comments that
Right,
they're a little clearer.
I think it addressed the 2 public comments that we received.
I agree, it's more clear wording, but not a change in what
Correct.
was
Yeah,
meant.
there's no change. It's just to clarify, like the class of 2027, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's an important change. And so that's valid.
I think one thing I'd just like to point out, of course, the minimum graduation requirements are set at the state level, right? And it looks like, and it's something I think we've talked about, financial literacy. That's a bill that's moving through. I think it made it through the House and it's heading to the Senate. That's likely to add a state graduation requirement of a financial literacy class, which I think is great. I think we just got to keep in mind how's that impact, particularly the Coeur d'Alene High School kids. That we're doing a little bit to free up some room for more elective choice for them, and that's one that's maybe going to tighten it up again. So we may be having this discussion forevermore. But
I think, maybe forevermore. But I know also, we've had some conversations with our Coeur d'Alene Virtual Academy, and and we're going to. Our plan is to hopefully report to you just kind of an update on that particular school. But I think that will also improve the options that our students, specifically at Coeur d'Alene, may have as well. So we're going to continue to explore how that would work out for you.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
In regard to financial literacy, it could be, and again, it's just only in the House, or it hasn't passed completely yet, but it could be like with the civics that we saw, where there are civic standards that were drawn out, but they were embedded within the current curriculum. So we may see something akin to that, including it could become part of what we see in our economics courses or something like that. So there could be opportunities like that depending on how the legislation rolls out.
So it may be embedded in an existing requirement potentially.
We could perhaps see something like that happen, yes.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, is there?
I do have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trent. I had a couple of parents come and ask me some questions about, especially for LCHS, would these new graduation requirements negatively impact students that want to graduate early? Say they're joining the military or have a trade school that they're going off to or something along those lines. Would that make it harder for them to be able to do that?
Well, it would be, I don't know if this is on, it would require 2 more classes. So that's true, I guess, in that regard. Those things would still continue to be a requirement for those students to graduate with their diploma. But, I think, too, we're always looking at how we can accommodate students, especially those students who want to graduate early. Well, I shouldn't say especially, but when students want to graduate early, what kind of online courses could we provide that would help mitigate that so that they would be able to do that in a timely fashion? But yeah, we wouldn't be able to, if this passes, we wouldn't be able to say, well, if you're graduating early, then, you have fewer credits that you would have to, complete in order to graduate. So in that regards, I guess possibly, depending upon the situation that they're in.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the kid, right? And the course they take, because I think currently it's 58 credits to graduate at Lake City. So if they took 8 per semester, so just a regular standard full load, they would be 7 semesters plus 2 credits that last semester. Right. Now we'd require 4 credits that last semester. or, there's lots of flexibility, right? They may take 6 each semester their senior year.
Yeah, and the other
things, but I guess, yes, it creates a little more work, but there's, even in the current schedule, if they're not taking extra loads outside of the standard day, they still have to come for 8 semesters.
High schools are unique nowadays compared to what maybe we remember. I mean, there's just a lot more. Yeah.
Summer school is an
Well, summer
option as well,
school,
right?
well, we have online classes that they could take. Summer schools generally credit recovery as opposed to, moving ahead. But there are always classes that they can take during summer school. We have a work force training class that they can take that is outside of their day as well. A lot of dual credit students now, by law, if a student takes a 3-credit class, it's worth 1.5 high school credits. So, that again bumps up the amount of credits that a student can take in a semester. Our counselors are really good, though, of just really mapping that all out for our students so that they can still graduate early. I would think that it would be still very doable for a student who wanted to do that. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve procedure 2700 P1 as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Procedure 2700 P1 is approved. All right, Mr. Voller, do you want to present to us about the CHS HVAC? Welcome back for HVAC. There you go.
Good evening. I don't have a major presentation for you today. We debated about putting this on the consent agenda, but mainly I wanted an opportunity to just kind of explain where we're at with the Coeur d'Alene High School 700 wing HVAC and roof replacement bid. We opened the bids on February 2nd, and they came in higher than we anticipated. And so they were above the amount that we had allocated from the budget. So, I wanted to just have a conversation with you about that and make sure you understood if we choose to approve this, what is going on with it. So as you'll see, we got bids from 2 contractors, Associated Construction and Graham Construction. Graham Construction out of Spokane was the low bidder, relatively close, within about 150 to 200,000 of each other in that bid. I would say that the architect and engineering team was really surprised with where the bids came in. They gave us a valuation that was much lower than that. In fact, lower than what we even had budgeted for this project. And I think a couple things went into that. One, this is because we're using ESSER funds for this project, we do have to do the Davis-Bacon wages. So there's some federal requirements with that. That does start to drive cost up a little bit. And so in that, to really understand what was going on with this project, why were bids coming in high, we took an opportunity. So I met with the architect and engineer team, and we invited in Graham Construction and their HVAC contractor that would be the primary heating and ventilating contractor that would be on this job, and said, help us understand the costs associated with this. And as we sat down and went through that, we started to understand that I think part of it is, this is a large project, and we knew that going into it. But it is, and it's a tight time frame that we have as well. It's a 2.5 month window. There's really 60 working days to do this job. And I started asking questions like, if we sequence this differently, is there a way that we could save money? If we did it, say, part over 2 summers, what would that look like? If we sequence it where we moved 1 or 2 classrooms around and worked individually from classrooms, would that save us money? And really the answer that I kept getting over and over again is no, it really would not impact it. And, and then I started to ask some questions. Actually, I called a couple contractors that chose not to submit bids that had plans and came to our walkthroughs to understand why did they not bid. For them, part of it was labor and manpower. They just don't have the manpower to do a job this size right now. And so again, I asked that question, if we waited a year, would that change anything for you? And they said, no, it really wouldn't. We may choose not to still bid at that point. So I wanted you to know that we did do some due diligence to really seek to understand where this was coming from, see if there were some cost savings. I think there could be some marginal cost savings in here. There are 3 different kinds of ceilings and insulation that are scattered throughout Coeur d'Alene High School in this area that we're going to be doing the remodel with. And there's some unknowns of what really is under those lids. And, you can see some of it under the grid ceiling. And so Graham Construction did say to us that, they would be willing to go in and look at that. And, if we could find a way to, sequence something in the work that they do that could represent a little bit of cost savings, they'd be willing to look for some credits that we could find in that. I don't think we're going to find major cost savings in that. The HVAC contractor did say he thought one he could probably look at right away was how he was using his cranes. So I think we could maybe find a little bit of cost savings with it, but really not a lot. So given that, I really do feel like the cost is kind of what the cost is at this point going forward. I think we're seeing, increases in product lead time. They've assured us that they feel like they can do this project in the time frame that we have allocated for it. We need to make approvals right away so that we can get products ordered. And then I think the other thing I wanted to say too is that, the plan to cover those extra costs is, in the 430 account money that the board approved, we left $600,000 worth of contingency money for inflation, cost overruns, really kind of such as this. And so I would propose we take $300,000 of that 600, reallocate it towards that. We identified $85,000 in funding that we had for some kitchen services, equipment, and remodels that we can actually use some excess revenue from the nutrition services account to pay for, so we can free up that money. I would propose we take less than the carpet allowance that we had in there and kind of reallocate some of those funds to cover the excess for this. So I just wanted the opportunity to explain that to you. So it is our recommendation that we approve this. I would say this is probably the #1 highest priority project we have in this district. And so, with that, I think we would recommend approval for it, but also wanted to be able to answer any questions you might have as well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Voller. I would agree that this should be our highest priority project in the district. It's been talked about for dozens of years in bonds. This year, I know there are, having a student at CHS, there are a number of classrooms with portable heaters in them because heat has quit functioning to certain sections of this school. I believe air, which luckily we don't need air conditioning a lot here, but I believe that is also quit functioning in a large chunk of the 700 building. So I agree, this is a must-do project for me, and I'd be happy to make the motion for approval of the bid as presented to Graham Construction in the amount of $2,968,000.
Rick, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, hearing none. Let's get CHS done. Let's get it done. Can we get it done?
We'll get rolling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts to figure out what was going on. It was nice. I mean, it's a large number and it's higher than we were hoping, but it's nice that you had all the steps you'd taken to try to figure out and see if we could mitigate. And so thank you for that effort.
All right. Mr. Davis, would you like to share with us an update on the calendar and everything you found out?
Thank you, Board Chair Smith and Board. I don't get a chance to speak with you guys very often, which, now that I think about it, it's probably a good thing. Prior to last year, the calendar committee made somewhat of a controversial decision in terms of how they wanted to implement Christmas vacation and Christmas break. And they pushed it back a little bit off the traditional schedule and went a little bit deeper into the Christmas season and took a little bit extra in January. We heard a number of comments from throughout our constituency, whether it's faculty and staff, community and patrons. So this year we thought, because we'd already had presented the calendar for 23-24, and it included the same type of Christmas break. So we thought, you know what, as much as we've heard, it would probably be a good idea to get a feel for what everybody thought. And so we put out a survey to the community as well as a survey to our faculty and staff, and we got those responses back. And interestingly enough, after everything was said and done, the community was pretty close, but it was 50.8% in favor of having this non-traditional approach as compared to 49.2% who would have rather we keep it kind of where it was. And what that means now is that Christmas break would run through the Friday before Christmas, which was an important day to give off because that extends to 4 days, the time off before the break, but before Christmas, and then takes it through January 7th. If we had stayed normal, we would have been coming back to school on January 2nd and still would have had 11 days off, 11 school days off. So it just made sense for us after looking at these numbers and then taking a look at the staff numbers. And the staff were very concerned as well until it was all said and done. And they really liked the idea of that week in January. So that the calendar that we're presenting to you tonight as the modified calendar only shows 1 day different, and that is the 22nd, Friday the 22nd. And if you look at it, it is still an 11-day break, same as it would be if we were traditional. Most importantly, it still covers 3 weekends. 3 weekends are really important to people over that break, the start, the middle, and the end one. And so we wanted to make sure we incorporated that as well. The good news is that for the 24-25 calendar year that you will be getting at some point here, Christmas falls on a Wednesday. This will be a non-issue, and we don't have to think about it anymore. So at least for another 5 or 6 years. Then it'll come back again. But that's the proposal we want to give to you, is that we modify the calendar by 1 day, taking that Friday the 22nd and adding it to the Christmas break.
Thank you for all that survey work. Any questions or? Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I mean, I think the only thing that I hadn't thought of until I spoke with Eric a month or so ago about this was, why not meet in the middle, right? And do a Wednesday to Wednesday or something like that. And he quickly pointed out that the calendar committee looked at that and you only had 2 weekends in there. So instead of being 16 or 17 days, it was 14 days. In talking with people, it was a little wonky, and most people said, well, you know what people are going to do, because it's what they used to do here at Thanksgiving. They're going to leave Monday, Tuesday, they're going to just skip those days, or they're going to skip the Thursday, Friday on the tail end and just do even weeks. It's maybe the best of a tough one. Can't make them all happy, I guess, right?
And hopefully this is the most difficult thing I ever bring you, right? That's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, since we did approve this last year, I think I would have had some heartburn doing a major shift, because there are people who have planned vacations and put deposits and those sorts of things on a calendar we approved last year. So I appreciate that this is a minor shift. It's 1 day. It addresses some of those things that we heard about family traditions and having time to bake cookies to take to grandma's house and all those sorts of things. It gives that day. So.
All right. Is there a motion? There's an action there.
I'll motion to approve the calendar for revision for 23-24.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That's our new calendar. Thank you. Assessment report then. Welcome, Heather. In this, we're excited to have you back. One of the things that when the board met earlier this month, we just want to make sure that we're bringing back assessments and data so we can make decisions. So we're excited to have you back up and back in the flow of that. So welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Dr. Hawker did share with me that little piece of your self-assessment, and I'm anxious to kind of talk to you about what that could look like. But tonight we'll be looking at kind of mid-year assessment data. So we'll take a look at what fall data looked like, and then we'll take a look at what our winter data looked like and some growth between the two. So, whoops, let me go back. Maybe. Seth, can I control this from here? I don't know if I can. I can.
Move the mouse to the right screen.
Move the mouse
Yep,
to
there
yeah,
it is. It's right
here.
there. Then click it.
Yeah.
And click it. And I don't know.
Nope.
Maybe the arrow.
Anybody? Somebody? Do you see?
I wonder if you can just, if you just use that arrow.
Use
I
the
think.
arrows?
Well, no, that doesn't do it
No.
either. Here,
I can scroll. Oh, I can scroll. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Well, here's our objectives for tonight. One to review fall data, one to compare kind of our mid-year growth, and then, of course, to answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to try not to let my technological prowess show. So just a quick reminder about the Idaho Reading Indicator, and I know this was in your board packet, so, but just wanted to let you know what is the purpose of each of these assessments kind of as we go through them, just so it paints a better picture of what are we looking at when we look at this data. Questions about why we have Idaho Reading Indicator, or iStation is what we'll look at the mid-year. So Idaho Reading Indicator requires us to screen our kiddos K-3 in the fall and then again in the spring. As a school district, we choose to look at a winter diagnostic as well, just so we can kind of monitor our growth along the way. I'm not a fan of that. So here's what our fall data looks like, and a little bit of longitudinal data from fall of 2020 to fall of 2022. One way that we like to look at it is sometimes just to follow a cohort and see what that looks like with those kiddos from year to year. So if you look at the fall 2020 kindergarten kiddos and you follow that along to fall 2021 and follow that along to fall 2022, you can kind of see tier 1 growth for that cohort of kids. Does that make sense when you're taking a look at that? So you can see that big jump from kinder to second grade, which we're excited to see. And what we want is for that to continue right into next year, then 4th higher, 5th higher. Any questions on our fall data for IRI?
Heather, you said we take this test 3 times a year?
We
Beginning, winter, and end of year?
We do.
Okay.
However, the winter is not a state requirement.
No, I know. There's only the beginning and the end.
Yes.
Okay.
But we do take this in the winter as
Okay.
well. Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yep,
Thank
and
you.
so I'll show you that fall to winter data next. If I can control myself here. So this is fall 2022 to winter 2023. So we'd be looking at September 30th data versus January 30th. We have an overall as a district in tier 1, which is what would be proficient, in the fall at 51% and growth to winter at 64 overall. What we're really also hoping to see beyond proficiency is that we see students move from tier 2 into tier 1, tier 3 into tier 2 or tier 1. So we're really looking for all kids to move into that green proficient area. So when you're looking at this, I think that's another way to see where growth has occurred, not just simply at the green or at the tier 1.
Can I ask
Essentially, we'd hope for nobody in tier 3.
Was the winter test given before winter break or after?
Always after.
Always after.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, so they had until January 31st to finish that assessment. Any questions about that? Next, we'll take a look at our iReady diagnostic, which is our K-5 mathematics screener. Same, we do diagnostic work, but we also do growth checks each month. So what we're going to talk about are really those diagnostic windows. So again, one in the fall, one in the winter, and one again in the spring, so that we can track our overall growth of students. We do have little checks in between, but they're not as deep of a dive into what kids are doing. So our fall iReady data, broken down by the different strands: numbers, operations, algebra, algebraic thinking, measurement data, and geometry, as well as overall. So this is a district-wide view. Longitudinally looking at from fall of 2020 to fall of 2022. Tier 1 is now to the right. I apologize for not keeping that consistent from assessment to assessment. I noticed that. But I did keep the colors correct. So green is what we're hoping for. Questions about that?
Leslie was just asking, same thing here. They take it, they'll take a spring version as well.
They do.
And spring's what's reported to the state, fall and
No,
spring.
this is not reported to
Oh,
the
you're-
state. We use our ISATs for that. We don't have a state-required mathematics diagnostic in K3, or K2, I'm sorry. But 3 through 5, we would be looking at ISAT.
So that leads me to ask, how are we deciding tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3?
These are nationally normed tests. So through, when we take this diagnostic, it is our curricular diagnostic. So iReady is our math curriculum that we use.
Okay, so this
K5?
is based on national averages.
Yes. Yep.
Is there, I'm even on the next slide, I guess, that fall to winter iReady growth. Is there norms for the amount of growth we should see? Because I'm seeing a lot. Am I seeing a lot of growth? I want to make sure I am, because it seems like there's.
So you're looking at this
what's normal?
I do not know off the top of my head. I'd have to talk to
Sorry
you
to
per
put you on the
grade
spot.
level.
Yeah.
No, that's a great question, though. I can find out what the growth should look like, and there is a chart for annual growth. It would be points more than percentages, though, but we could take a look at that and then try to compare the two, benchmark versus normed, and what does that look like, for sure. So I'd be happy to provide that, unless
Yeah, or
Miss
Dr.
is Mike.
Nelson, he looks excited.
Is he chomping at the bit?
You
Get in
look
here.
excited and hovering. Well, because I'm seeing some of these in tier 3 in winter. Those look like pretty great numbers there.
Be awesome.
For improvement and growth overall, and so that's.
I tend to have a bit of a lean toward elementary, but yeah, I think that's pretty great growth in a lot of areas. I do want to talk about kindergarten, though, for a second, and I should have done that. Is that what you were going to say? No, you. Oh. So kindergarten with iReady is a little, I don't know what the word is, but strange in kindergarten. Particularly in the fall, we really don't have what I would call very valid or reliable data for them. There's a lot of things that they don't have norms or I can't think of the right word, for them in kindergarten. So we kind of have to take it a few times and get going and get into it. So when you look at kindergarten, while it looks super exciting, I would sort of keep in mind that it doesn't measure kindergarten students very well in the fall.
And I wasn't even looking necessarily at kindergartners, but as I move up here. I mean, you're at
Mhm.
10% of second graders, which
Yeah.
is different than what we've seen. And it
Mhm.
seems like it's different than what we've seen in
Mhm.
previous years, even during COVID. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Nelson.
Talk about percentage of growth.
Right. Chair Smith, Superintendent Hawker, and
Mhm.
members of the board. She's absolutely right. There is
Who
no
knew?
there is no norm reference regarding proficiency percentages. iReady's norms are based off of numeric growth, and it ranges in terms of points anywhere from 30 to 50 points per term. We'll be more than glad to share with you the actual tables of proficiency for you so that you have a better understanding. But when we look at the students in Tier 3 specifically, that should almost always mirror our average of students receiving special education services. And that's just under 10% right now. So you can see, for the most part, we are moving kids in the correct direction, getting them to grade level instruction.
I have more of a technical question.
Go
So
ahead.
this is a computer test.
It's
Are
adaptive.
the children sent off independently? Are they monitored so they stay on task? Are they just like, go do it? I mean, I taught kinder for a long time. There's no
Mhm.
way I ever would have given a
It's
kid a
really
test
fun
on a
in
computer.
kindergarten, I will tell you this, especially in the fall. It
But are
is-
they supervised?
They
Are
are.
they sent off independently so they don't come back 2 seconds later and go, I'm done already? Okay, so
Well,
they do have some monitoring.
Most of the time
So
they
these are
don't.
pretty
but-
accurate.
Mhm. They are. They're monitored. And in a lot of cases in kindergarten, I will say again in September, having a kinder baby, they're all over the place with
They're just
how
little
to use their.
babies. Yeah.
They're shockingly proficient for the most part, but as
that's
far as,
awkward test.
yeah, you can imagine. A lot of times we bring in a cohort of fifth grade kids who help them log in and kind of do those things so that they can get started. But they are definitely monitored. They're definitely take time to practice how to get into an assessment prior to being let go and go. But kids are kids. And so sometimes, depending on the day, the other part of it is that we can pause and stop. And if a kiddo has a hard day, be that they're sick or tired or just don't want to, we can reassign that diagnostic to them so that they could have an opportunity to show really what they know on a good day.
What's the average length of the test, approximately? I know it's different for different
Different from
grades.
each grade, and I
First
would
grade.
say it's computer adaptive too, so depending on how far and how long a kid wants to go.
Okay.
But I've had kids, I would say generally they can be done in 40 minutes. At the upper grade, kinder, it depends on whether they're attentive to it or not. Maybe a half an hour, but they are built to be engaging.
Okay.
So it's not that just a math problem flashes across the screen and they have to figure it out. It is interactive and it looks a lot like something that they might want to do if they didn't know better. And that's intentional, so that they stay with it. And there's a lot of encouragement built in. There's even some brain breaks built into the assessment. So we really do try to give them an opportunity to show what they know.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to get a sense
Yeah.
of how the accuracy for these types of
If
assessments.
a kiddo's really intent, they can take quite a bit of time. If a kiddo's really not feeling it, they can also take quite a bit of time. But there's ways that we can go in and see if they clicked through it. And that's a good indicator for a teacher that, hey, buddy, you know what? Let's try it again another day when you're wanting to show what you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. FastBridge assessment is what our 6 through 12 grade students take. And this one has a little bit more of a lean toward a toe in the water of how's our curriculum doing. They take this 3 times a year too, but it's really just to see, are we making growth and what does that look like for us? So FastBridge isn't, and Katie, you can holler if I misrepresent anything here, but Fastbridge isn't the same company that our math curriculum comes from. Whereas iReady, our curriculum is iReady curriculum through Curriculum and Associates, but Fastbridge is not the same company as who we have our other curriculum through, our upper grades curriculum through. So I guess what I would say about this is that students who take these are, if you're a dual credit student, when you get into the upper grades, you don't take these assessments. If you're in an AP or an honors course, you don't take these assessments. So when we look at the data for our upper grade kids in particular, I think we have to keep in mind that it's not an entire cohort of kids that are taking this test. Does that make sense?
I'll talk just maybe briefly from a board perspective, kind of what I see with Fastbridge, and maybe Dr. Nelson or Katie can correct me when I misspeak. But I feel like several years ago, we weren't doing a nationally normed test throughout the year checking in with kids. And so what often happened with high schools is they would take the SAT, the PSAT, those sorts of things, and parents were like, whoa, what, why did I not know? I could have got my students some more help, those sorts of things. So we originally used a different company when we started doing that I want to say is out of Western Washington.
Was it NWEA?
NWEA was the initial group we used. And I think part of the issue when COVID struck, it was an in-person test only. There was no online version of it. Is that correct? And so we switched after 1 year or
Correct.
2 years.
It was 2 years.
To Fastbridge, because Fastbridge allows us to do an online component. So if a kid was remote or they're in our e-school, they could still take the same assessments. So there's not a lot of history on this, a couple of years.
Right, and Trustee Morris, one of the other considerations was the length of the assessment. It was anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes per class period. So at Coeur d'Alene High School, for example, it took up an entire period. And that was considered a little bit much. Even though the data was probably greater and more diagnostic, it was considered to be too much class time that was there. So we tried to find something with a little bit better balance.
I have a question about Fastbridge. I have some high schoolers who tell me they get the same questions every time. Is that...
I don't know.
Can
the
you
answer
speak
to
to
that? I can
Is that
tell
how
you.
it should be working? Is it because they're just at the highest tier and they're just getting the highest tier questions every time, or?
That sounds suspicious to me. I don't know why they would get the
Okay.
same questions. And if it were lower grade kids, I could answer that, because sometimes it's a matter of how they log out of the test. If they hit the X and just leave, then it doesn't record their score. But if they actually log out, then it records their score. So in the younger grades, if they do that, they'll go back in and they will get, it's Groundhog Day, like over and over until you actually log out of the test. But I don't know about Fastbridge.
And I haven't heard any similar reports to that. Usually that would be something that our content teachers would report back in. Has not been something that I have heard in our 3 years of now using Fastbridge.
We can look into it though and find out.
I've heard it from several of my kids and their friends. So,
Interesting.
maybe they aren't trained in how to log out. Maybe that is the issue. I don't know.
I know we didn't know at the elementary, and kids were saying it, and in your mind, you're kind of thinking, yeah, buddy, it does look the same, but it's a different question, And then actually, the truth was, yes, it was exactly the same thing until they logged out appropriately and scored correctly. So we'll look into it. I haven't heard that, but you never know. So this is kind of the same idea that you can track a cohort of kids. I love longitudinal data for this exact reason. So if you look at a sixth grader in fall of 2020, sixth grade was at the 75th percentile, then 74th, and then by the time they got to eighth grade, they were 80th percentile in proficiency, and that's sort of, I didn't purposefully pick that group, but I know it might seem so. But that's kind of what we hope will happen, right? Over the years, if we're using our curriculum and we're using it with some consistency, we should see that type of change in proficiency over time. Have questions about the reading data? Fall? Okay. So here's reading growth, fall to winter. I will definitely take a look at going, I feel like we're doing Army data, left, right, left, all night tonight, but I'll fix that for the next time, so sorry. So when you look at overall, 81% to 80% in winter, a slight decline, but probably not too significant. Again, something that I want to talk about is just that cohort group and how that can change depending on what classes kids are taking or what they're doing. They could be taking the test one semester and not taking it the next. So this data is a little bit hard to read consistently because of that. I will say also the older that the kiddos get, the more of them that kind of drop off of the cohort because they're starting to take those dual enrollment classes. They're starting to take those higher level classes as well. Questions about that? Here's our fall math data. Take a look at the 8th grade cohort of fall 2020 and the 6th grade cohort of fall 2020. This was the first year that we offered this. And I think sometimes the understanding that we're all going to do it, sometimes in the beginning is a little bit hard. So that is definitely 2 grade levels with an anomaly in fall 2020. I wish that we were at 99% in the tier 1, but that data is skewed. So it makes it kind of difficult to follow that cohort the way that we like to. We could possibly follow a 7th grade cohort of an 83% in tier 1, and then as 8th graders they were at 72, and as 9th graders back up to 79. So just kind of knowing what life was like coming back out of COVID, I don't think there's a lot of surprises that our data could have shown that. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. Maybe. So fall to winter math. A couple of things that I always want to look at right away when I look at this is not only has our tier 1 moved up, but also have our tier 3 and tier 2 decreased. Because we're always looking to move everybody, in this case, to the left. Questions? I know, sorry.
I guess I have a question. Is the score needed to be in tier 1 in the fall the same as the score needed to be in tier 1 in the winter, or is that like
No, they
adjusted up?
change, yes.
Okay.
They adjust up, so they'll look at, again, your benchmark scores, and yes, what we're looking for is a year's growth. So if a kiddo's made more growth, a year within the school year, so if a kiddo's gone above and beyond what's expected.
So so a kid could be in tier 1 in the fall with a score of, I'm making it up.
Yeah.
A score of 50, but then if they scored 50 in the winter, they might be in tier 2.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Other questions? PSAT results. These are interesting this year. I kind of like to always put the why in there, and I think that most of you kind of know the why. But there is a difference between why we would do a PSAT and an SAT. Although I'm not reporting on SAT yet, I really did want you to have a moment just to look at that and see that the purpose of these are a little bit different. We take PSAT in 9th grade, although it's called the 8-9 because there is an opportunity for 8th graders to take it as well. We don't in this district. We take it just in 9th grade. PSAT and MSQT, that's the National Merit Scholarship opportunity. We take in 10th and 11th, and then SAT in 11th as well. So I really only have this year's data, so there's really nothing comparative to speak of, and that's for 2 different reasons. One, the last time we took PSAT as an entire school district was around 2017, I think. Is that right? 18-19, and they renormed it in 2020. We don't have any way to compare a full cohort of kids taking PSAT with the same norming, if that makes sense. So once they renormed it, we kind of have to throw that data can't really be side by side. And then we made the decision to have every student take it. So then that changes what that looks like as well. So I did go through and just kind of show you the number of kiddos in our district that took it, 9th graders, how many met both of the benchmarks for writing, reading, and math, how many met none, and then just what our mean scores were based, and then above you can see what the average score or the expected score for that is above it. So in English, reading, writing, our mean score as a district was 446 as opposed to 410. In math, 434 as opposed to 450. So 66% of our kiddos met the benchmark there in ELA, 43% in math, with an overall average score of 880.
Would it be possible to get those numbers by building at your convenience?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Would it be okay to put those in board notes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Grade 10, similar, as far as what data I can show you right now. And would you like to see the same? Yes. Okay.
Probably for all 3.
Mm-hmm. You bet. And then grade 11. Questions about PSAT? Okay. And civics. I just wanted to put this in here so you can kind of see how we're doing, but also to explain to you that our civics is a grad requirement. It was a 100-question exam for a long time, and then we had an administration, a federal administration that came in and wanted it to be a 144-question exam. And then that administration left, and then another administration came in, and now it's a 100-question exam again, which I might add, our social studies teachers and students much, much prefer the 100-question exam over the 144-question exam. It didn't change until after our first window in September this year, so students have an opportunity to take a civics exam 3 times in a large window throughout the year, starting in 7th grade. So our first exam window was the 144 question, with not a lot of excitement of 48 participants. And then we changed to the 100-question exam, and then woohoo, we have 691 kiddos that took it through December, and our passing rates are looking pretty good up there. So, and I think that's pretty consistent with what it typically has been. But they have multiple opportunities, so it's really just keep taking it until you pass it. There's a lot of opportunity for studying and all kinds of things on our website and just out there for them. So, questions not about civics.
I think on that one now, a large group, most of the 8th grades administer it now. Now, that had kind of been a change in practice. I believe Woodland and Lakes maybe did previously, and Canfield did not, but I know Canfield does now as well.
They do, yep. Okay. That's it for new data. Anything else that I can do for you besides provide PSAT? And then we'll chat about what updates could look like or what you're wanting with those. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on here. We've got a couple of things that are going to come out for first readings and stuff. So the first is Ms. Southwick. Do you want to say anything about because you presented this, our annual organization meeting? You don't often get a chance to share. This is just updated language, right?
It is just updated language so that we can do the annual organizational part of the meeting right after the approval of agenda instead of having to approve minutes first. So minutes can just stay on the consent agenda.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Great. Any questions? All right. Well, that will go out then for public comment and come back to us next month. Ms. Groutman, do you want to present on these 2 new three new course proposals?
Yes, good evening, trustees. We're bringing 3 new course proposals before you. This is in alignment with the idea that we were wanting some more courses to bring to offer students in areas of their interest, also in alignment with the idea, especially for the sports and performance psychology. This would be in the social studies area, and this would be one of those core courses that a student could take as an elective that would allow them to meet those requirements that could be changing or that are changing at Lake City High School. So we have art history and then competitive athletics and sports performance and psychology that we're bringing before you for the first reading. Then we would ask that they be put out for 30-day review and bring it back before you next month for a second reading.
I have a question about art history. I see this is honors. They have been doing AP. Is this a switch from AP to honors?
That's a great question, Trustee Timbrink, and I can get you more information on the rationale behind that through a board memo if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe they were doing AP.
Yes, we do have AP art. I'm not sure if this would be in replacement.
Addition or a replacement?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Is there any trustee questions about any of the 3 course proposals that are before us? All right, not at this moment. Thanks. Those will go out for comment. Thanks so much. All right, just some information then. We've got Day on the Hill coming up in February. 3 trustees will be attending that, which will be great. Want to invite everyone and remind everyone that we've got the Let's Talk Levy public event on February 24th down at the Coeur d'Alene Library. So looking forward to that. And anyone that has questions, comments, wants to come and discuss the levy, we'd love to have you there for that. And that's at 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. We've also got a regular board meeting then March 13th, the night before the levy. So, and then a board workshop on March 20th, the following week, following that. And so some of those things moved. Anything else? I think that is it for us. Thank you, everyone. And thanks to the community as well. All right. Take care. Meeting adjourned.